Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Peter. Thanks to the committee for having me present my Fred research again in a little bit of an expanded form, and it gave me the opportunity to expand that research, dive in a little bit deeper, and still realize I hadn't dove far enough. So there's still more research to be done, which is exciting. So the scorecard vote, a fan's view of the 1895 Phillies. My whole idea was, I was at a rest stop as these things go, and I discovered that there was a final scorecard vote favorite Philly contest printed in the October 1st, 1895 Philadelphia Times. And I thought, this is extraordinary. Fans voted on their favorite Philly. So let me dive into this. And that's the rabbit hole I went down. And here we go. So, what I wanted to know at the outset was two general questions. What was the purpose of the scorecard vote? And why did fans vote the way they did? Ambitious questions. Was I successful in determining those two? We'll find out at the end. So you go to the ballpark, you buy a scorecard, and everybody loves scorecards. So before diving into the results, we need to understand why the scorecard vote existed in the first place. First, we got to talk about the scorecard publisher. First, let's start with Harry Stevens. Stevens hawked scorecards at Philadelphia Ballpark in 1894 at Philadelphia and in other cities. He was quoted as saying, "At Philadelphia, here you are. This card is official," and all that word implies. Who wants a scorecard? The official program containing the names of the players, who they are, and where they play. You can't guess them. They all look alike. Find out for yourself. Don't be bothering your neighbors with questions. The higher a man's intelligence, the more he wants a scorecard. Thank you, another intelligent man. The wise men are not all dead yet. I'll give $1 for every change that is made in the striking order. End quote. Confident guy, Harry Stevens. But what does this mean? Clubs solicited bids to sell scorecards at the ballpark. Harry Stevens, for example, bid $3,000 in 1894 for Pittsburgh's rights. How does it work? Well, he guaranteed the club $3,000 in scorecard sales. After the threshold was reached, he began to make a profit. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette estimated that roughly 50,000 scorecards would need to be sold to meet the guaranteed threshold. This picture here is Harry Stevens at left and Colonel Rogers at right. And before anybody complains that that's not Colonel Rogers, well, it is now. Colonel Rogers claimed that Stevens guaranteed $2,000 for the 1894 season, but he was disappointed in the results. For 1895, Rogers demanded anyone bidding on the rights pay the club cash in advance. So, with Stevens out of the picture, who's next? Enter Harry Louis Solomon, also known as Lou Solomon, a Pittsburgh native, and according to the Sporting Life, was long associated with Harry Stevens. He won the scorecard vote privilege. He won the scorecard privilege in Philadelphia in March 1895. And in mid-April, the Pittsburgh Press announced that Saul has a novelty in the scorecard line, which promises to make a big hit. In May, Solomon and an unnamed partner opened a program advertising company in Philadelphia with branch offices in New York City and Pittsburgh, which suggests that Solomon's enterprise was larger than just the Philadelphia rights. Now we have a basic understanding of the scorecard rights and the parties responsible for producing them. It's time to explain the voting process. On May 4th, the Pittsburgh Press announced that the new scorecard included a ballot upon which the buyer would write the name of their favorite player. The process is pretty simple. Patrons bought a scorecard, wrote the name of their favorite Philly on the ballot, and deposited the ballot in ballot boxes stationed at the gates upon leaving. At season's end, the leading vote getter was awarded a $300 silver cup. Ooh, ah. Scorecard publishers like Harry Stevens and Lou Solomon produce scorecards to make a profit. Those who are responsible for those profits, I like to call the participants. But first, I'll discuss the draw. The first participant is the teams, the reason why the scorecards will be purchased in the first place. The general rule of thumb in this era was a good team drew fans to the ballpark and therefore increased the owner's profits. Exciting players and winning were critical to this equation. The Phillies' first season in the National League was noteworthy in that they were truly awful, going 17-81. Owners Reach and Rogers brought in Harry Wright to manage the team in 1884, and the club records its first winning season a year later. The 1886 club finished with a .623 winning percentage, still the third highest in club history. Ed Delahanty arrives in 1888, and Sam Thompson a year later in 1889. These two formed the backbone of the club's offensive success for the next decade. The Phillies finished in the first division each year between 1890 and 1894. The 1890s Phillies scored the third most runs per decade of any club in Major League history, trailing only the 1890s Boston Beaneaters and the 1930s Yankees. For the decade of the 1890s, the Phillies scored 9,078 runs, or 6.5 runs a game. Today, if you have a good baseball team, a good offense, you're hoping to get 800 plus runs in a season. That's 5 runs a game. The Phillies won the third most games between 1890 and 1894. The offense is exciting. It drew patrons to the ballpark. And I think I saw Craig Brown on the list, and I appreciate his allowing me to use his renderings from Threads of Our Game below on the bottom row here for the presentation. The fans. This is me and a couple of friends before opening day last year. I kid, it's from 1895. For over 150 years, Philadelphia sports fans have been notorious for their even-keeled demeanor and only exercising level-headed sporting opinions. Bill Hassemer, who broke into the majors with Washington in 1894, explained to the Philadelphia Evening Item correspondent in July 1895 that, quote, Philadelphia is a good ball town, big crowds, and everybody decent people. He missed the mark a little bit. For example, in 1889, a riot nearly broke out after Philadelphians felt the Phillies were wronged at the end of a game with Boston, which resulted in Harry Wright having to run protection for King Kelly. Now, if you've heard Richard Hirschberger talk about this or have seen his Facebook posts, you might have noticed him occasionally reference a game similar to Merkel's Boner in 1889. This was that game. And in 1893, an opposing player, Cub Stricker, a Philadelphia native and member of the champion 1883 Philadelphia Athletics, tossed a ball into the stands that hit a fan on the head. The crowd called for his arrest, and fearing that a royal might result, a local police officer arrested him at shortstop to the delight and satisfaction of the local fans. Unfortunately for him and Washington, being down a couple of runs, his spot in the batting order came up with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning, creating quite the conundrum. But this was the nature of 1890s baseball fans in general. I think we can all find or have found similar excerpts of fan craziness in game accounts throughout the decade. 1890s Philadelphia fans were comprised of men, women, and children. They cheered and jeered their team as well as the opposition. They were passionate, and they even formed fan groups. More on that in a second. Let's just go through a couple of renderings that I discovered in 1890s Philadelphia papers. Here's the first guy to buy a ticket to Philadelphia ballpark after its reconstruction for the 1895 season. Here's the scene in the outfield on opening day in Philadelphia, 1895. There's a lot of bowlers there. This is particularly one of my favorites. It shows a fan hoarse from cheering and yelling, but he had a great day. as I said, women were often at the ballpark. She looks enthusiastic, as the commentary suggests. This guy was upset that Sullivan made an error, but no worry, he was very excited after Jack Clemens' home run. Let's say you get to the railroad station, you're late to the ball game, and this guy comes out here and says, well, I can include admission into your trip to the ballpark. So he's got quite the contraption here. It looks like he's got it, jumped up so people don't have to go into the ballpark. They can just stay on the tram itself. And take a look. We have a ball shooting out, perhaps an Ed Delahanty extra base hit right here. And as I said, Philadelphians formed fan groups. So I've highlighted here the Morris Guards, Kelly's Rooters, and Donaghy's Rooters. They're mentioned in newspaper accounts in 1894 and 95. These fan groups attended away games as well as home games. After an opening day victory over Baltimore in 1895, the Times noted exuberance that these groups and other Philadelphia fans displayed that evening, even printing the names of those who made the trek to Baltimore via train. I can't imagine. And Jack Clemens, catcher, was presented with a fine locket by various Rooters groups at the Phillies home opener in 1895. Some fans were so impassioned about the Phillies that they wrote songs about the team. Both of these songs, At the Game of Ball and The Game the Phillies Play, were both published in 1895. In At the Game of Ball, the narrator brings his girl to the ballpark and marvels at her beauty as the game is played. Her beauty was evidently so striking that Sam Thompson took notice while at bat and smashed a home run to the crowd's delight. The Phillies won, everyone was happy, and the Phillies were heroes, and the narrator's girl played a central role. Similarly, in The Game the Phillies Play, Howard Bott takes his wife to the Phillies game, quote, for she wanted to see the game the Phillies play. He narrates the game in song, potentially a Decoration Day game against Chicago in 1894, but expresses his disappointment in the final verse. I had a friend record this, so we'll listen to a verse briefly, and then I will read that final verse, and it's pretty comedic. As I mentioned, after that whirling rendition of I believe that's the waltz, verse 4, the final verse, is terrific. It says, the game is done, we've had our fun, but not our money's worth. We fail to see the Phillies are the greatest team on earth. The day was hot, the game was not, it couldn't be more tame, and as we leave the festive scene, we hear a voice exclaim, and then it goes back into the voice. The Phillies were zeros, total losers. Next, the team's exciting. The fan base is passionate. This translates, of course, to higher attendance. Philadelphia Ballpark has the second highest capacity in Major League Baseball in 1895, behind only the Polo Grounds in New York. As mentioned earlier, the Phillies racked up the third most wins from 1890 to 94, yet never won the pennant. Despite this, they led the National League in attendance each of those 5 seasons. A brand new modern ballpark, a hungry fan base, and a talented team drove attendance to heights then unseen in Major League Baseball. In 1895, the Phillies drew 474,971 fans. It's the highest attendance figure of the entire decade in the 1890s, and it wasn't surpassed until John McGraw's Giants drew nearly 580,000 in 1903. Why does this matter? Money, of course. Money. Finally, the last of our participants that I want to discuss, the guys who actually got the votes, the players. We'll start by going through the players who received votes position by position. First are the pitchers. 11 pitchers pitched in a game for the Phillies in 1895, yet only 4 garnered votes. Pitching had been the club's Achilles heel for several years, and 1895 was no different. The staff ERA was 5.47, 10th among the 12 National League clubs. First, we have Al Orth. Orth pitched against the Phillies in the spring when he was with Lynchburg. So manager Arthur Irwin was familiar with him and signed him for pitching depth in August. Orth didn't disappoint, going 8-1 over 11 games with a 3.89 ERA in 88 innings. He eventually, by the end of the decade in the early 20th century, becomes the club's ace. Next, Willie McGill. He was signed in March to bolster the pitching staff. He was left-handed, and he only pitched in 20 games due to a lingering injury. He last pitched in August, and he resurfaces with the Yanagans, the Phillies reserve team, in September. Next is pitcher Kid Carsey. In his 3 seasons with the club, he had a 57-43 record with 4.45 earned run average in 119 games. In fact, he ranks among the top 20 pitchers between 1892 and 1894 in games started, innings pitched, wins, and whip. He didn't throw hard, so he made do with off-speed pitches and his cross-fire motion. Frank Richter of the Sporting Life said a Carsey pitch, quote, comes up apparently as big as a balloon and with hardly enough speed to put a dent in butter. And yet it is seldom hit hard because Carsey mixes them up and does not put the ball where a man wants it if he can help it. In addition, Carsey fields his position in first-class style and holds the men closer to the bases better than any other local pitcher. Finally, as discussed before the presentation began, Jack Taylor. He establishes himself as one starter in 1895. In his 3 seasons with the team, he had a 34-22 record with a 3.99 ERA in 69 games. He only threw 494 innings between 1892 and 1894, but he throws 335 innings in 1895 alone. He's really the club's only above average pitcher across multiple statistical categories in 1895. And at home, he's pretty decent. He's 19-3 with a 3.13 earned run average and a 1.446 whip. Now that the pitchers are done, let's go around the diamond. Backup catcher Mike Grady, who is a localish guy from Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, the self-proclaimed mushroom capital of the world. Coming off a nice rookie season where he slashed 363, 427, 516 in 213 plate appearances across 61 games. He could play anywhere. Primarily, he was a not-so-good fielding catcher, but he also played first base, so it's kind of questionable why he didn't play more, considering how good he was at offense and how poor first baseman Jack Boyle was at first base. And he was tabbed as the captain of the reserve Yanagans. Starter, Jack Clements. He's the primary catcher, born in Philadelphia, and he's a surly backstop who had a penchant for hitting for power. Between 1884 and 1894, no catcher recorded more hits, hit more home runs, drove in more runs, or had a higher OPS than Clements. And 1895 is a career year, despite playing in limited action. At home, he's hitting 426, His on-base percentage is .474, and he's slugging .680. So he's having his way at the plate at Philadelphia Ballpark. Let's go to first base, where we have honest Jack Boyle. The press from around the country for years remarked that his demeanor and defense made him a popular player with both teammates and fans. He's installed as team captain in 1894 and again in 1895. He's an adequate defender who is coming off a career year in 1894 where he hit 300 for the only time in his 13-year career. And as we see here, he's definitely better at home than he is on the road. At home, he's hitting .277, on base at .318, and slugging pretty poor .333. He's typically at the bottom of the lineup, but he is the team captain. Making our way to second base, we have Bill Hallman. The Philadelphia Times noted on May 29, 1895, that, quote, "The stand rose when Hallman made his first appearance at the bat, and cries of 'Hallman, Hallman!' rent the air. Billy's work in the West was remembered," end quote. He's an adequate defender who is at the peak of his career offensively, hitting over .309 with a .758 OPS in 1893 and 1894 combined. Noted as always having a smile on the field regardless of the score, and like many ball players, Hallman was active on the vaudeville circuit. Unlike many ball players, he was actually good at it, and he made a full-time career after his Major League Baseball career had ended. He also played for 3 Philadelphia Major League clubs, so he's kind of a home guy. In 1895, he hits .303, on base at .347, and /347. Next, third baseman Lave Cross. He's coming off a career year in 1894 when he slashed .387, .424, .526, and he was worth 5 wins above replacement. He records a career-high 19 R field. I know that's an advanced metric, but what that suggests is it's the number of runs better or worse than average the player was for all fielding. He also had the 6th highest defensive WAR, according to Baseball Reference, in Major League Baseball in 1895. So he's arguably the best defensive player in Major League Baseball that season. Next, backup catcher or backup shortstop / utility player, Charlie Riley. I note here that he's creative. And if you've read Jerry Casway's book, and I believe Jerry's still on the call, but his book, Ed Delahanty and the Emerald Age of Baseball, the Phillies were not known for the kind of style of baseball that Baltimore played and that Boston played. They didn't have that kind of style in them, and it probably hurt them in pennant races. Well, Charlie Riley is a little different. Unfortunately, he wasn't very good. But in a game versus the Giants on August 14th, the Philadelphia Times lamented that style of play. Quote, "Riley cannot forget the kind of ball he learned in Columbus in the days of the association, and whenever he gets a chance to do a dirty piece of work, he is right there. He interfered with a fielder earlier in the game, and in the 7th, he cut third base by what the paper said was 10 yards. The umpire didn't notice, called him safe at home, and the Giants rightly went ballistic." The Times followed that Riley was popular in the voting contest despite his antics, suggesting Philly fans approved of this style of baseball. Next, primary shortstop Joe Sullivan. There's not much to write about Sullivan. He has a very short major league career. In 1895, he hits .338, gets on base .395, and slugs .389 in 94 games. And he's about the same at home, so he's a pretty even-keeled player. His backup outfielder or utility outfielder, Tuck Turner. Turner joined the Phillies in 1893 and proved himself to be an exceptional hitter. In 1894, he slashed .418, .458, .539, and 382 plate appearances across 82 games. The trouble was he was blocked from playing every day, thanks to guys like Ed Delahanty, Billy Hamilton, and Sam Thompson, all of whom are now in the Hall of Fame. So he's truly a luxury for the Phillies. Early on in the season, one of the Philadelphia daily newspapers suggested that Bill Hallman should shift to shortstop and Ed Delahanty moved to second base where he originally played when he joined the club in 1888 so that Tuck Turner could play every day. Unfortunately, Delahanty was moved from the infield to the outfield for a reason because he really was awful at defense on the infield. So such a move was really unrealistic on a full-time basis. And let's get to our Hall of Famers. Ed Delahanty, he's a star and the Phillies' best player according to the box score. One of the Philadelphia dailies on opening day labeled Delahanty as the Phillies' Casey from Casey at the bat. Delahanty, like I said, he's the star. He's got the best offensive statistics of the team for the 1895 season. He hits 404, gets on base half of the time, and slugs 617. And he was more devastating at home, recording a 435, 524, 687 slash line. In center field, we have Billy Hamilton. He's a club spark plug at the top of the lineup. He electrified fans with his dazzling play in the outfield and his ability at the plate on the bases. And finally, but not least, right fielder Sam Thompson. He's coming off a historic season. He led the majors in home runs with 18, RBI with 165, and in slugging with 654, and in total bases, 352 in 1895. It's his last great season. He was known for his even demeanor. He didn't quarrel with umpires, didn't get into fights, didn't have troubles with alcohol. Ultimately, Thompson's the winner of the 1895 Favorite Philly contest. So let's talk about by the numbers. Now that you know the players, you know the teams, you know the fans, let's find out how the votes come down. So first, we'll look at May's numbers. Only 6 home games are played in May for the Phillies, and no votes were published. Remember, these votes are only being cast at Phillies home games. So we have no votes to look at. We do have some slash lines and some other things to take a look at, but while you gander at those, I'll mention that Philadelphia had 12 dailies in 1895. The Philadelphia Inquirer and the Philadelphia Times published the most daily results of the scorecard contest, yet they ranked 3rd and 5th respectively in daily circulation. As I mentioned earlier, cheers went out among the crowd for Bill Hallman's exceptional performance out west. So we know that these Philadelphia fans, they aren't voting simply based on what happens in front of them, but they're also voting based off of probably what they read in the newspapers. Now let's add in some votes here. Let's take a look at June. So in June, there's 19 home games played, and the first votes are published. Bill Hallman, Lave Cross, and Billy Hamilton are the top 3 vote getters. Respectively, they have a 557 OPS, a 400 OPS, and an 1149 OPS. That's these guys here. Delahanty is 4th with a 987 OPS. Sam Thompson is 10th with an 845 OPS. So as far as offensive production is concerned, you might argue that Delahanty and Thompson should have been in over Cross and Hallman, but they weren't. Let's take a look at July. There's only 6 home games played in July, and there's only votes published for 4 of the games. Thompson, Jack Clements, and Riley are the top 3 vote getters. Statistically, the votes for Thompson and Clements make sense, as we see here. Riley doesn't make any sense. He's an absolute anomaly. He garners 799 votes while registering only 1 at bat, without any hits and without any walks. but he has 799 hits. I'm not sure really if this is legitimate or if it's a mistaken tabulation by two different papers. But like I said, it's two different papers, two different sports editors. It'd be hard to get those numbers wrong. Let's take a look at August. 22 games are played and votes are published for 20 of the games. Our top three vote getters are Sam Thompson, Lave Cross, and Billy Hamilton. Here they are at the top of the table. Thompson had a 957 OPS, Lave Cross an 812 OPS, and Billy Hamilton a 1098 OPS. So pretty good offensive months for these three guys. Delahanty down here received the ninth most votes with an 1159 OPS. So he's arguably more devastating overall at the plate than either of those three guys, yet he barely finishes in the top 10. And here we finally see the entry of Al Orth. As I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, Al Orth was brought on in August to help shore up the pitching staff, and he actually does really well. So his votes for August actually make a lot of sense. And he gets the most votes out of any pitcher on the team this particular month. And finally, let's take a look at September. There's 20 games played, but only 2 games are published. 2 votes are published, but at least we have the final vote. That's very helpful. Top 3 vote getters are Sam Thompson, Billy Hamilton, and Lave Cross. Thompson recorded a 1430 OPS, Hamilton a 1317 OPS, and Lave Cross a 708 OPS. Again, our guy, Ed Delahanty, Casey at the bat, he comes in at 6th this month with a 1292 OPS. So let's take a look at some conclusions. My initial idea was to prove why the Phillies fans voted the way they did in 1895, but it's impossible to do so really without any concrete information. It's not like we can dig these people up and ask why they voted the way they did. Some 51,261 ballots were cast, accounting for 11% of the total number of tickets sold to Phillies home games in 1895. The scorecard vote is among the earliest participatory functions for fans who wanted their voices and opinions heard. There's no sports radio in 1895. I really think that this has, like I said, a participatory element where people can voice their opinion and complain about things on the subway. So why did the Phillies fans cast their votes the way they did in 1895? Well, they're like modern fans, turns out. They appreciated timely hitting, power hitting, fine defense, intensity, and leadership. They enjoyed a high-octane offense and lamented inferior pitching. But one question that still perplexes me is why Ed Delahanty finished 6th in the voting in this contest. So I have a few ruminations. I have no idea if they're correct or not, but I'll offer them up for you to think about. Delahanty rejected the captaincy when he was offered it earlier in the season. And according to a 1910 interview given by Honest Jack Boyle, Delahanty was among the greatest hitters of the age, but he treated baseball as a job and not as a passion. Boyle was asked to compare his teammates Delahanty with another teammate that he had in his career. And he just said that for Delahanty, it was just a job. It wasn't that he loved baseball, breathed baseball, anything like that. He was more concerned with personal success than he was with the team's success. And with that, this presentation, or at least this form of the presentation, is complete.
Matt, thank you very much. Let's leave the slides up for just a minute, because there may be some questions about votes that we get back to those. But there's a good number of comments and questions here that we'd like to address to you. The first is technical. When you were running the music, Mike Halpert noted that you have to set your computer to share audio with the audience. You could hear it through your earpiece, but we heard the first 8 bars and then not much of anything else. And
Oh, that's a disaster.
there's a setting somewhere in there that goes beyond me, but a couple of folks just noted that they can't hear it. That's where such is life right now. Matt will give a personal concert of these things at Broad on Tuesday after.
Yep.
Daniel DiNardo notes, I think you made a reference to Memorial Day, and at this time it was still called Decoration Day. Wasn't changed till after World War One, I believe. I still remember my grandmother always, we had to go to the cemetery on Decoration Day into the 50s. More on the sound. I'll get to. Where does the name Yannigan mean, and where does it come from?
That's a great question. I'm glad somebody asked. I don't know. I think I read where Jack Boyle had come up with it himself, or Mike Grady had come up with it himself. It was something, just a word that he used in his vocabulary. So they decided to run with that name. Whether or not that's true or not, it's Mike Grady, not Jack Boyle. It was noted in his SABR bio.
Yeah, I remember Yannigas, I believe, is generally used as rookies or the second string or something of that nature. It was not the starting team. Right. Mr. Alvarez also asked, where was the ballpark located that the Phillies home ballpark?
Yeah, so like I said, this is the new ballpark constructed in 1895. This is what becomes, I'm sorry, Seamus, the Baker Bowl. The moniker comes up in the 1920s. So it's at Broad and Huntington Streets in North Philadelphia.
Okay, and that's at the other end of Lehigh from where Connie Mack Stadium will be.
Yeah, it's a little further north than Connie Mack Stadium would be, a couple blocks north, right near North Broad Street Station. Reading's North Broad Street Station.
Okay. There's Eric Miklas was asking if Clemens, the catcher, was a lefty, because I think we've all heard that. Is he?
Yeah.
Was he the last?
He's caught the most games of any left-handed catcher in history, over 1,000 games caught. The last one I think was Benny DiStefano. I think Andy Tarrick's on here. He could correct me if I'm wrong. Late 80s Pirates.
Okay.
1980s Pirates, that is.
And Daniel DiNardo, there's just a statement here, wearing a St. Paul uniform, the old Northern League question mark. Daniel, I'm not quite sure what that's referring to, but Stu Thornley noted a couple comments later that at that time, St. Paul was part of the Western Association in the 1880s, 1890s period.
Yeah, this one here, for these slides, I just tried to find pictures of these particular ball players that were different from the thumbnails that you see at right. Sometimes I wasn't able to find a decent enough one, but in this case, he's wearing a St. Paul uniform. And
concerning Baker Bowl, Seamus on his best behavior and nice gentleman there. He said that it was called National League Park apparently in the when it was first opened, and became the Baker Bowl in the 23. I guess when Mr. Baker bought the club.
It's Philadelphia Ballpark in the 1890s. It becomes National League Park when the American League sprouts up.
Okay, all right. Pamela Baker has an interesting a comment here about the scoring, scorecards. Fan scoring was very popular, and during the baseball wars, when the fans saw different scores in their paper than the score was on their card, they would stay away. Now, there's a later, we'll talk next about the baseball wars, but do you have any insight as to people's reaction to when newspapers didn't match scorecards? Did it hurt attendance?
No, I haven't come across anything in the commentary notes about that. so I wouldn't be able to offer up any commentary.
Joseph Cowell asked about the term baseball wars, and Joseph, anytime a new league popped up, the papers were always full of war because the National League didn't want any competition. So in 1882, when the American Association came, there was a baseball war. It wasn't solved until 1883 when the new national agreement came in. But the Union Association in 84, the Players League in 90, and the American League, 1901, were all baseball wars, as was the Federal League in 1914. One way or another, there was somebody trying to bull their way into major league status. The American Association made it, but they didn't last until four of their teams were subsumed in 1892 into the National League, and then the American League got to hold their status as they do today. Although with interleague play, it's kind of hard to exactly look at some of that thing. Dave Albertson notes when you were talking about where Riley's votes came from, he noted that Riley had his relatives voting for him. And somebody later was talking about the Irish relatives. Well, my question about that is, what happened for Delahanty and Boyle and Sullivan and McGill? Somehow only Riley's family showed up.
It's really, Ed Delahanty finishing 6th in this voting contest goes against anything I would have assumed about being a most popular player. Like I said, he's called, the Casey of the lineup early in the 1890s. He's the focus of the team's offense primarily, along with Sam Thompson, yet he finishes behind. So if you take a look at the chart as it stands right now, I have it organized in as how the players finished at the end of the season in the scorecard vote. So Cross finishes 2nd, Hamilton 3rd, Jack Clements 4th, Bill Hallman 5th, and Ed Delahanty we see 6th. I have no idea why Ed Delahanty would finish behind anybody really other than Sam Thompson. It's one of those life's mysteries that I'm dedicated to finding out.
Well, did Delahanty's batting average hold up that season? Because that was the key indicator of a good player. He had a high batting average in that era.
He hits over 400 in 1895, and like I said, his OPS is the highest on the entire team.
That ought to be good
offensively. Offensively overall, he's the best player. Thompson did lead the club in homers and a couple of other categories, but overall, Delahanty's the best.
A couple of there's questions. Orth was the first Philly pitcher with 100 wins. Was Orth the first Phillies pitcher with 100 wins? That's
a great question. I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure.
That question comes from Daniel DiNardo. You might want to check his email and send him a note. Yep. John Gregory notes that Delahanty had similar raw stats to Thompson, yet had a lot fewer RBIs. Where in the batting order did he typically hit? And did fans pay much attention to RBIs? That Delahanty fell beneath notice relatively.
Right. That's a good question. Both he and Thompson are middle of the order kind of guys. So they're hitting 3rd, 4th, or 5th, depending on the game. I believe Delahanty's hitting before Thompson more often than not.
I believe that RBIs were not on anybody's radar because they don't become an official stat until 1920. Right. But although they are kept, I believe, by the American League from around 1915, 16, 17, somewhere in there, they do collect them, but they don't become an official stat in the rule book till 1920.
Yeah, if you look at a box score from 1895, you'll notice runs scored. So you'll notice hits, you'll notice runs scored, putouts, and something they could be very basic like that.
Mr. Donaro also asked, your field diagram credited the Philadelphia item. Was that one of the dailies?
Yes, it was. So before I jump to that, our 12 dailies are going to be the evening item, which led the city allegedly in daily publication with 191,000. Second, the Philadelphia Record, then the Inquirer, the Public Ledger, the Press, the Times, the North American, the Evening Telegraph, the Evening Bulletin, the Philadelphia News, the Evening Herald, and then finally the Evening Star. So if I could find it, yeah, there it is. So this is just there's a comment on this particular I guess you call it graphic that this is how the Phillies players are positioned whenever Carsey pitched. These guys are staked into the ground, so I don't know whether or not it has to do with him pitching to contact because he's a slow pitcher and could field his position well, or if it was something bad. I'll leave it up to your interpretations.
Well, it seems like a abbreviated field because the outfield is because of space, I guess. Yep. Paul Langendorfer asked if you could put up the final tally of the votes because he'd like to take a screenshot while you're trying to do that. Mike asked, were the errors a limiting factor in Delahanty's popularity, since he was not much of a fielder?
I don't think so, to be quite honest, because the guys ahead of him are also getting a lot of errors on the infield, particularly. Yeah, if I can pause screen sharing here really quick.
Okay. Dane Gennaro also notes that Dale Long was in the 50s and 60s was a left-handed catcher. He was mostly a fill-in, though. He never wasn't very often that he was a regular catcher. Let's see, presentation. Do any scorecards exist from this season that has the voting coupon on it?
The answer is there are ones that do exist. However, I've not been able to get my hands on one, nor find a picture of one. One sold on eBay, I want to say about 10 years ago. I was in touch with the seller, but was unable to convince him that he should send me any photographs of that program. So I wasn't sure if the ballot was in there or not.
Mike Halpert has a note here. He says that the Joyce Sports Collection at the University of Notre Dame has a large collection of scorecards, but he doesn't know if there's any of the 19th century Phils, but it might be someplace for you to check. Ian Braun notes that according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, Yannigans is a member of a scrub team. Etymology is perhaps alternative to young ones. He's seen it used in early 20th century news clippings for players in their first couple of seasons. Let's see.
And here we go. Here's just in case anybody wants to know. Here's the final vote tally.
Okay.
For 1895, so you can peruse it at your leisure.
It's not showing up on my screen.
Resume share. Let me see.
Well, you keep looking at the mask.
How about now?
Your ears. While I ask a question or two. Delahanty's finish could have been this is from Seamus. Delahanty's finish could have been the beginning of the Philly Boo Birds penchant to boo the best players. And he notes that Ennis, Schmidt, and Roland all had instances of that sort of thing. As Scott Hanks asked, was the ballot an insert or part of the scorecard itself?
Yeah, so it's first I'll answer that. It was an insert, just a little piece of paper, based on what I read that they included in there. It was blank, and it was understood based on what the Philadelphia Times and Philadelphia Inquirer had published, that you write the name of your favorite player on there and deposit it in the ballot box. As to Seamus's comment, well, in 1883, during the Phillies Athletics City Series game, before the first game the two clubs play, verbal and audible criticisms were dispatched upon both nines as they were practicing before the game even began. So Philadelphia fans being Philadelphia fans before the game even begins.
If you want to keep trying to put the final vote up on the
Is
screen.
that not up yet?
No, it's just showing. It's your opening slide. Scorecard vote. Fans' view of the 1895 Phillies is what's showing up there. Now you're gone, so start over again. But I want to thank you very much. It was a very entertaining and informative presentation, and we look forward to your moderating the book club here in March, but also look forward to seeing you at the Fred or at another speaker series. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Peter, if you'd like to close us out. Let's say, Peter, is he gone away?
He was on mute.
Yeah, yeah, you're still muted.
Let me back up. Thank you, Matt.
There you are.
Very, very much. It was a great presentation. I love that team. I love that team the year before, too. It was a great team. And I wrote about two of those players, Brewery Jack Taylor and Chuck Turner, both Staten Islanders. Seamus was at the meeting many years ago I was at when Joe Ditmar was honchoing the Philadelphia chapter. And Joe came in and said, well, the Phillies fans have voted Bobby Abreu as the best all-time Philadelphia right fielder. And when you go down the list, the top five are Bobby Abreu, Johnny Callison, Chuck Klein, Gabby Gavette, and Jason Worth. Sam Thompson got honorable mention. So much for people recalling history, right?
People forget, right?
Anyway, I want to thank Rock again for making this all happen with the chapter members, and of course Bob, who invented this whole 19th century baseball speaker series. Matt did such a sterling job with this at the last Fred. I asked him if he would come back and be willing to do this. And I appreciate very much all your effort here, Matt. Thank you very much. Next month, we have one of our veterans here for the 19th century baseball speaker series, Paul Brown, who'll be talking about hustling Dan O'Leary, who was one of these real 19th century promoters. So you want to take a look at that next month. That's going to be on March the 12th. So we'll see that then.
And if you're tired tonight, it's leap year, so you get an extra day of rest before the next speaker series.
and Matt, there was one slide there where you depicted up in the upper right hand corner that team of 1894. And when I first saw that photograph, that team photo of the Phillies, I got a little confused because it showed three Staten Islanders in that photograph: Jack Taylor, Jack Sharrett, and Chuck Turner. And believe it or not, what happened, it's a pre-season photograph. And it's taken before the season actually starts. And who's not on the starting roster is Jack Sharrett, who had been with the Phillies by that time a few years. And what's kind of interesting is that Sharrett brought Chuck Turner to Harry Wright's attention. And Chuck Turner took Sharrett's job. That's how things work in baseball. Anyway, thank you again, folks. We'll see you next month. And actually, for some of you who want to come in about 8 days from now, Jack Bales will be doing his book club presentation on one of my favorite books, Peter Morris's book, But Didn't We Have Fun, which is about pioneer age of baseball. Right.
Peter, if I could close out, there's one more comment that came in from John Gregory. He Googled the term Yannigan bag, and it turned out to be a cowboy term dating to the Civil War, and he has no idea if it had anything to do with the baseball term of 30 years later. I've always heard of Yannigans as the youth team or the scrubs of some sort.
Oh, that was what it meant. Okay, great. Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you,
You know,
John.
all you Philly guys, Rosemont College, February 23rd, 24th, isn't it, Matt?
I used to do an antique
24th.
show there years ago.
24th.
24th.
Nice venue. Nice venue. Okay, folks. Thank you again. See you next
Thanks all.
month.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good night,
folks.
all.
Bye.
Thank you.